The Atlas Defense Technologies boardroom, usually a bastion of hushed power and calculated ambition, fell into an almost eerie silence. Every executive, every board member, sat ramrod straight, their faces a carefully constructed mask of surprise as Rachel Donovan, the legendary Ice Queen CEO, delivered her bombshell. "Meet my husband," she announced, her voice as sharp and clear as crystal, yet with an unusual tremor that only Logan Hayes, standing quietly beside her, seemed to notice. Logan Hayes. A collective gasp, then eyes widened in utter disbelief. There, beside the formidable woman who commanded a multi-billion-dollar empire, stood a tall, utterly unassuming man in plain, almost threadbare clothes. It was the same man they had seen silently cleaning their offices, mopping their floors, for months. The same phantom figure they'd dismissed as part of the building's anonymous background hum. What the powerful businesswoman, with her razor-sharp intellect and impenetrable composure, couldn't possibly know was that her convenient, contractual spouse, the supposed janitor, had once been Logan Hayes, the battle-hardened commander of America's most classified Special Forces unit. The man who scrubbed away their grime had, in another life, brought down dictators and meticulously dismantled terrorist cells across the globe. And now, as unseen, shadowy figures began to tighten their stranglehold around Rachel's carefully constructed empire, Logan's meticulously buried past was about to violently resurface, threatening to unleash a storm with lethal, unforeseen consequences. Rachel Donovan strode with purpose through the gleaming, futuristic lobby of Atlas Defense Technologies. Her navy pencil dress and crisp white blazer a stark, almost defiant contrast to the muted earth tones and clean lines of the Austin headquarters she now commanded. Employees instinctively scattered from her path, their hurried whispers following her like a tangible, invisible shadow. 6 weeks had passed since the suspicious yacht accident that claimed her father's life, a tragedy still shrouded in unanswered questions, and a mere 3 weeks since the board had unveiled the shocking, archaic stipulation hidden within his last will and testament. Marry within 30 days or forfeit controlling interest in the company. The sharp, rhythmic click of her Italian leather pumps echoed with singular clarity against the polished marble floor as she made her way to the executive elevator, a stark drumbeat to the frantic countdown in her mind. Asterisk 30 days to find a husband. Asterisk the sheer, preposterous absurdity of it made her jaw clench so tightly it ached. Joseph Donovan, her father, had built Atlas from nothing, brick by painstaking brick, tirelessly teaching his daughter every intricate aspect of the business, meticulously preparing her to step into his formidable shoes. And yet, in death, he had saddled her with this seemingly insane, utterly anachronistic condition that threatened to unravel everything she had relentlessly worked for, everything she had sacrificed for. Her office, now clinically redecorated to her exacting specifications, a testament to her demand for efficiency and control, was a panorama of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sprawling Austin skyline. Rachel reviewed the intricate blueprints for Atlas's latest missile guidance system, her mind effortlessly processing complex schematics, while her assistant, Vanessa, a picture of harried efficiency, provided hushed updates on potential candidates for Rachel's emergency marriage. The VP of Marketing, Vanessa began, scrolling rapidly through her tablet. Divorced, attractive enough, and already cleared for classified information, Rachel dismissed him with a dismissive wave of her hand, not even glancing up from the glowing schematics on her screen. Too ambitious. He'd never accept a temporary arrangement. He'd try to claw his way into the C-suite. The chief financial officer, Vanessa continued, unperturbed, her fingers flying across the tablet, too connected to the board. He'd report everything back to Blackwood within hours. Rachel finally turned from the blueprints, her gaze sweeping across the vibrant city below. I need someone with absolutely no stake in Atlas, she articulated, her voice precise, almost surgical. Someone who understands discretion implicitly. Someone. She paused, a flicker of raw frustration tightening the severe line of her mouth. Someone utterly controllable. That evening, after meticulously dissecting and discarding 7 more potential husband candidates, each found to possess some fatal flaw, Rachel finally escaped. She drove miles from the gleaming glass towers of the corporate district, seeking refuge in a small, dimly lit dive bar. A place so far removed from her world that no one would ever recognize the Ice Queen of Atlas Defense Technologies. Several potent drinks later, her meticulously maintained control, usually an impenetrable fortress, began to crumble. The crushing weight of her father's untimely death, the precarious future of her company hanging by a thread, and the relentless, ticking clock of the inheritance clause all conspired to overwhelm her usually unshakable composure. In this rare, vulnerable state, her gaze drifted across the room and found itself inexplicably drawn to a quiet man with remarkably observant eyes, sitting alone at the bar. There was something profoundly steadying about his presence, an anchor in her storm, something hauntingly familiar she couldn't quite place. Logan Hayes listened intently, without an ounce of judgment, as she vaguely, almost incoherently, described her bizarre predicament. His calm, almost stoic demeanor was a striking counterpoint to her raw, emotional turmoil. "Sometimes the most impossible problems have the simplest solutions," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to effortlessly cut through the bar's raucous noise, a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. Rachel studied him more closely, her analytical mind, even in its inebriated state, beginning to catalog details. Broad, powerful shoulders were clearly discernible beneath a simple, faded gray t-shirt. Strong, capable hands, scarred and calloused, wrapped casually around his whiskey glass. A thin, almost invisible scar traced a jagged line along his jaw. But it was his eyes that truly held her attention, eyes that held something deeply familiar, something she recognized from her own guarded world. The careful, hyper-aware watchfulness of someone who had seen far, far too much. Just then, an aggressive, overly familiar patron, emboldened by alcohol, began to harass Rachel, his lewd comments shattering the fragile peace she had found. Logan intervened with startling, almost surgical efficiency. There was no dramatic flourish, no wasted movement. Just a precise, controlled wrist lock that required nothing but pure, unadulterated expertise. The aggressor, his bravado instantly evaporating, let out a yelp of pain, profusely apologized, and quickly retreated, melting back into the shadows of the bar. The potent combination of alcohol, the intense emotional release she desperately needed, and this enigmatic stranger's unexpected, unwavering protection utterly dismantled Rachel's carefully constructed defenses. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked, her voice a hushed whisper, moving almost unconsciously closer to him at the bar. Logan merely shrugged, his expression a practiced blank slate, revealing absolutely nothing. "Here and there," he murmured, his gaze steady. "You pick things up." The rest of the night blurred into a tapestry of unguarded confessions, unexpected intimacy, and a profound, undeniable connection, culminating in an impulsive, reckless invitation back to her penthouse, a decision she knew, even then, would shock her rational self. Morning, however, brought a brutal clarity that morphed quickly into an electrifying shock. Logan Hayes, the man she'd invited into her most private sanctuary, was unmistakably part of the Atlas maintenance staff, the quiet, almost invisible janitor she'd passed 100 times in the corridors without ever truly seeing. Yet, instead of the crushing embarrassment most CEOs might have felt in such a compromising situation, Rachel's formidable, pragmatic mind immediately saw opportunity. Here was a man, she reasoned, with no discernible connections, no apparent ambitions, someone she confidently assumed was a compliant failure who could be easily controlled, discreetly compensated, and then just as easily dismissed once his purpose was served. She watched him from the doorway of her opulent bedroom as he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the vibrant Austin morning light. His posture, she noted with a sudden, unsettling jolt, was unervingly military straight, an incongruous rigidity that starkly contradicted his supposed station in life. Something didn't quite add up about Logan Hayes. But Rachel, ever the pragmatist, was too consumed by her immediate, pressing problem to delve deeper into such perplexing inconsistencies. Over coffee, she coldly proposed her contract marriage. 1 year, generous monthly payments deposited into a discreet account, entirely separate lives, and absolute, unquestioning discretion. Logan considered her with those same unreadable eyes, his expression betraying nothing, before agreeing with a single, non-negotiable condition. No background checks beyond the standard employment screening he had already passed. "Everyone has things they'd rather leave behind," he said, his voice quiet yet firm. Rachel, confidently assuming he was merely hiding minor legal troubles or accumulated debts, readily agreed. The arrangement, she concluded with a self-satisfied nod, seemed absolutely perfect. A compliant husband with no interest in her company, and, crucially, no power whatsoever to threaten her hard-won position. They married quietly 3 days later at the county courthouse, a perfunctory formality devoid of pomp or emotion. Logan wore a surprisingly ill-fitting borrowed suit, while Rachel, in a simple, elegant white dress, betrayed nothing of the cold, calculated business transaction taking place. As they signed the papers, neither noticed the solitary figure across the street, partially obscured by a parked car, expertly photographing them through a telephoto lens, nor the encrypted message he immediately dispatched. *Target has changed patterns. New variable introduced. Rachel's announcement of her marriage, delivered with her characteristic cool precision, sent palpable shock waves through the Atlas boardroom days later. Board members exchanged skeptical, bewildered glances, their whispers like a collective buzzing, as Logan stood quietly beside her, looking profoundly uncomfortable in his first, and, she assumed, only designer suit. Marcus Blackwood, her late father's oldest friend and the formidable board chairman, scrutinized Logan with an almost predatory suspicion. "Quite the whirlwind romance, Rachel," he remarked, his handshake with Logan lingering just a beat too long, as if subtly assessing his strength or character. Logan met his gaze with practiced blandness, his eyes revealing absolutely nothing. "When you know," Rachel replied with a practiced, almost brittle smile, her hand resting possessively, almost defensively on Logan's arm. The other board members nodded, some with obvious, visible relief. The inheritance clause, the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, was now satisfied, their lucrative positions seemingly secure. Only Blackwood remained visibly troubled, his eyes narrowing imperceptibly as he continued to observe Logan's careful, almost deliberately unremarkable movements around the room. To maintain appearances and quell any lingering gossip, Logan moved into Rachel's starkly sterile penthouse apartment, a space as devoid of personal warmth as a high-tech laboratory. She immediately established clear, non-negotiable boundaries. Separate bedrooms, minimal interaction, and absolutely no interference in her demanding work. Logan complied without a single complaint, continuing his janitor position despite her suggestion that he take a paid leave of absence. "I prefer to earn my keep," he said simply, his voice flat. Rachel, ever the pragmatist, misinterpreted this as the simple pride of a working-class man, completely unaware that Logan desperately needed continued access to the building to systematically investigate his own burgeoning suspicions about Atlas. Their initial weeks together established a precise, almost ritualistic rhythm of careful avoidance, a silent truce in their unusual arrangement. Rachel's days began at 5 a.m. with a punishing fitness routine, followed by 14-hour workdays that bled into the late evening. Logan, conversely, worked the night shifts, moving like a ghost through the vast, empty building while executives toiled late on classified projects, utterly oblivious to his true purpose. In the rare moments they did share the apartment, Rachel found herself increasingly disconcerted by Logan's uncanny efficiency. He observed and adapted to her habits without a single discussion, anticipating needs she never even articulated, as if possessing an invisible radar tuned solely to her. When Rachel struggled with her chronic insomnia, she would return home to find perfect, steaming cups of chamomile tea waiting silently on her bedside table. When she skipped meals during intensive work periods, nutritious, pre-prepared food would mysteriously appear in her office refrigerator. Logan required nothing from her, explained nothing to her. His quiet, almost unnerving confidence was simultaneously comforting and deeply irritating to a woman who prided herself on needing absolutely no one. One night, returning earlier than usual after an unexpectedly short board meeting, Rachel found Logan in the spacious living room, engaged in a series of precise, almost balletic military push-ups. His movements were so fluid, so utterly controlled. They appeared effortless, a stark display of raw, disciplined power. He stopped immediately upon sensing her presence, rising to his feet with an almost unnatural grace that seemed profoundly incongruous with his supposed background. When she tentatively questioned him, he merely offered a shrug. "Staying fit helps me work better," he said, his voice neutral. Rachel let it go, but silently filed away this growing inconsistency. Adding it to a rapidly expanding mental list of unanswered questions she'd begun to compile about her enigmatic husband. Their first real clash, sharp and unexpected, erupted when Rachel hosted a crucial dinner for a consortium of potential military clients. Logan, whom she had explicitly intended to keep far away from the high-stakes gathering, stepped smoothly and unexpectedly into the role of host when her own social anxiety, a rare vulnerability she fiercely guarded, threatened to derail the entire evening. His seemingly effortless, utterly unexpected knowledge of intricate military protocols and complex defense systems, which he blandly attributed to reading a lot, charmed the grizzled generals, making them laugh and confide with surprising ease. Rachel was simultaneously profoundly grateful for his intervention and absolutely furious at being so expertly upstaged. She confronted him afterward, her voice tight with a mixture of wounded pride and genuine anger, accusing him of brazenly overstepping his carefully defined boundaries. "You were drowning," Logan said simply, his gaze unwavering. "I just kept you afloat. I don't need rescuing," she snapped, her voice rising, raw with emotion. "Everyone does sometimes," he responded softly, something like ancient pain flickering momentarily in his eyes before his expression snapped back to its usual neutral mask. Before she could demand further explanation, he had quietly retreated to his room, leaving Rachel with the profoundly unsettling feeling that she had, for a fleeting second, glimpsed something achingly genuine beneath his meticulously maintained facade. Meanwhile, Logan, a silent shadow in the vast labyrinth of Atlas defense, continued his own covert investigation during his routine maintenance rounds. He uncovered deeply troubling security gaps within Atlas's ostensibly impregnable systems, discovered a network of encrypted communications that bypassed all official channels, and identified mysterious shipments of advanced technology that eerily matched patterns he recognized from his former classified life. His suspicions solidified into grim certainty. Rachel's father's death was neither a tragic accident nor a cruel coincidence. Joseph Donovan had been murdered, and Rachel herself was now undoubtedly in grave danger from treacherous forces operating deep within her own company. During his late-night shifts, Logan expertly slipped into secure areas, utilizing the unsuspecting access his janitor's position provided. He downloaded gigabytes of server logs, meticulously photographed sensitive shipping manifests, and delved into the dusty basement archives where he unearthed glaring discrepancies in financial records dating back months before Joseph Donovan's death. He found irrefutable evidence of company resources being systematically diverted, prototype tests deliberately manipulated, and highly classified information leaking through carefully concealed digital backdoors, all part of a sophisticated, sprawling conspiracy. As Logan, without explanation, became increasingly protective, his subtle interventions becoming more frequent, Rachel's frustrations steadily grew. She had built her entire career on an unwavering foundation of control and fierce self-reliance, yet she found herself, almost against her will, responding to this quiet man's subtle, unspoken guidance. When she finally confronted him about his mysterious, late-night phone calls and his increasingly frequent, unexplained absences, Logan offered only vague, unsatisfying reassurances. The unspoken tension between them, both professional and deeply personal, built inexorably, their carefully established boundaries blurring and fracturing despite their strenuous efforts to maintain distance. 3 months into their bizarre arrangement, Rachel secured a monumentally lucrative Department of Defense contract for a revolutionary drone targeting system, an achievement that unequivocally cemented her position as the undisputed CEO of Atlas. The celebration at Atlas headquarters was a high-profile, glittering event, attended by an array of high-ranking military officials, influential board members, and key technology partners. Logan, still meticulously maintaining his janitor's cover, watched from the periphery, a silent, almost invisible guardian. As Rachel commanded the sprawling ballroom in a striking, midnight blue gown, finally, truly, accepted into her father's demanding world. From his vantage point near the service entrance, Logan's trained eye, honed by years of combat intelligence, meticulously catalogued every potential threat. He noted catering staff with unexpected access to secure areas, identified security personnel whose positioning left critical blind spots in their coverage, and observed a particular guard whose communication patterns and subtle movements seemed profoundly off protocol. Something felt deeply, disturbingly wrong, triggering the hypervigilance that had kept him alive through countless impossible operations. During her powerful keynote speech, Rachel's moment of triumph, Logan noticed that same security guard, now positioned unsettlingly close to her, his movement patterns subtly yet unmistakably deviating from standard protocol. As the guard's hand disappeared ominously inside his jacket, Logan abandoned his janitor cover identity without a moment's hesitation. He moved with controlled, silent precision through the crowded room, a human torpedo, reaching Rachel just as the guard drew a concealed weapon. With a fluid, practiced motion, Logan smoothly redirected the attack. The bullet, meant for Rachel's heart, grazed Logan's arm instead. A searing pain barely registered amidst the adrenaline. In the ensuing chaos, Logan neutralized the assassin with brutal military efficiency, his movements betraying years of elite combat training. Rachel watched in stunned shock as her unassuming husband transformed before her eyes into someone utterly unrecognizable. Commanding, lethal, and absolutely, terrifyingly controlled in the midst of a life-or-death crisis. When additional security, initially caught flat-footed, finally arrived, Logan had already vanished from the scene, leaving Rachel to grapple with bewildered police and a torrent of unanswerable questions. Hours later, she found him in their penthouse, calmly, methodically stitching his own wound. Blood stained the pristine white tiles of their bathroom floor. A stark, visceral contrast, but Logan's hands remained perfectly steady as he worked, his breathing controlled and even, as if performing a mundane chore. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice a raw tremor, adrenaline and confusion making it shake uncontrollably. Logan merely offered a terse, practiced answer. He had some experience with security and suggested the attempt on her life was connected to the same discrepancies he'd noticed in Atlas's classified projects. Rachel's world violently tilted on its axis as the horrific realization crashed over her. Logan had been meticulously investigating her company all along, from the very beginning. "You've been lying to me since the day we met," she accused, her anger a thin veil masking a deeper, more profound fear. Logan finished tying off the suture, his movements unhurried, before finally answering. "Not lying," he clarified, his gaze steady. "Just not sharing everything. There's a difference." "Not to me," Rachel countered, her voice still sharp, but the blazing heat was already fading, replaced by a grudging, terrifying acknowledgement that without his swift, brutal intervention, she would undoubtedly be dead. Their raw confrontation was abruptly interrupted by an urgent, piercing call. Atlas's servers were under a full-scale breach, sensitive weapon designs, the company's very intellectual lifeblood, were being specifically targeted. Despite her profound mistrust, Rachel had no choice but to bring Logan with her to the emergency response at headquarters. There, he demonstrated an expertise in cybersecurity that no janitor, no simple maintenance worker, should ever possess. Working seamlessly alongside their frantic security team, he expertly traced the sophisticated attack to an internal source, a mole deep inside Atlas itself. As Logan's fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur of controlled motion, Rachel watched with a growing, terrifying certainty that absolutely nothing about this man was what it seemed. He navigated through complex, encrypted systems with the effortless confidence of someone who had done this hundreds of times, identifying intricate attack patterns and predicting the hacker's next moves with uncanny, almost prescient accuracy. All evidence, painfully, undeniably, pointed to Marcus Blackwood, her father's closest friend and, until now, her most trusted advisor. Logan urged extreme caution, explaining with quiet authority that Blackwood was likely just a single, expendable piece in a much larger, more intricate conspiracy. When Rachel, blinded by betrayal and rage, demanded to confront Blackwood directly, Logan finally revealed just enough of his shadowed background to establish his irrefutable credibility. "People like Blackwood don't work alone," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "If he's compromised, others are too. I've seen these patterns before." "Where exactly have you seen these patterns?" Rachel pressed, crossing her arms tightly, her gaze unwavering. "What exactly aren't you telling me?" Logan's eyes met hers, his gaze measuring, calculating precisely how much to reveal, how much she could truly handle. "I worked in intelligence assessment for a while," he finally conceded, his voice a low rumble. "Military. That's all I can say right now." Rachel, though still bristling with unanswered questions and a growing sense of unease, reluctantly agreed to investigate quietly. With Logan's surprisingly adept, almost intuitive assistance, they accessed her father's hidden private servers, a digital sanctuary Joseph had meticulously created off the company grid. There, they uncovered a trove of encrypted communications, damning evidence suggesting a systematic, long-term sale of highly classified weapons technology to a shadowy network of international buyers, a devastating treason plot that had, shockingly, begun months before her father's death. The yacht accident now took on a horrifying new significance as Rachel realized, with a sickening lurch, that her father had almost certainly discovered the conspiracy. As they worked tirelessly together through the long, dark night, professional barriers, once so rigidly maintained, slowly, imperceptibly crumbled. Rachel began to see beyond Logan's calculated simplicity, beyond the quiet janitor, to the brilliant, strategic mind humming beneath. Logan, in turn, glimpsed a profound vulnerability behind Rachel's formidable armor of ambition and icy control. When morning finally dawned, pale and cold, they had forged an uneasy, yet powerful, alliance, one based on mutual need. She desperately required his unparalleled skills to meticulously uncover the full scope of the conspiracy, while he, in turn, needed her access to Atlas's innermost secrets to unearth the truth he had been relentlessly seeking since leaving military service. Neither acknowledged the other current, an undeniable, potent force, slowly yet surely developing between them, a connection far stronger than mere convenience or fleeting necessity. The deepening investigation forced Rachel and Logan into even closer, more constant proximity. They established a secure, makeshift operations center in a neglected, forgotten corner of the vast Atlas campus, a space that felt both clandestine and strangely intimate. For the first time, Rachel witnessed Logan's methodical, incisive mind fully engaged, a breathtaking display of raw intellect. He meticulously constructed intricate timeline maps, analyzed complex communication patterns with startling speed, and predicted enemy movements with an unsettling, almost prophetic accuracy. When she questioned his unorthodox methods, Logan finally revealed a carefully crafted half-truth. He had once been involved in intelligence analysis, an admission that explained his bewildering array of skills without exposing his true, deeply classified background. Working late into every night, fueled by caffeine and a shared, grim determination, they painstakingly pieced together fragmented evidence of the conspiracy. Shell companies received Atlas technology through layers of obscure intermediaries. Weapons tests were deliberately sabotaged after delivery to unsuspecting U.S. forces. Classified designs, subtly modified, mysteriously appeared in the arsenals of foreign adversaries. The insidious pattern revealed not merely isolated acts of corruption, but a meticulously coordinated, systemic effort to deliberately undermine American defense capabilities while simultaneously profiting immensely from the illicit sale of fully functioning systems to a network of private, wealthy buyers. Their breakthrough, as devastating as it was definitive, came when they finally decrypted a cache of files detailing Blackwood's offshore accounts. Payments flowed into these accounts, precisely coinciding with the catastrophic testing failures of Atlas technology, failures that compromised American defense systems while providing fully operational systems to private, illicit buyers. More disturbing, far more disturbing, were repeated references to Phoenix containment, a phrase that caused a visible current of tension to ripple through Logan's usually impassive expression, cracking his carefully constructed stoicism. The enigmatic phrase appeared in multiple encrypted communications. Ensure Phoenix containment remains priority. Phoenix assets must be neutralized. Phoenix commander location unknown. Each mention sent a palpable jolt of tension through Logan, though he struggled valiantly to hide his reaction from Rachel. Before she could press him about his profound reaction, their makeshift command center was suddenly violently compromised. A security breach. 3 professional operators, moving with a chilling military precision, infiltrated the building, their objective undeniably their location. Logan instantly shifted into combat mode, the transformation swift and absolute. He barked terse, precise instructions at Rachel, guiding her through evasive maneuvers with the fluid, unquestioning command of someone utterly accustomed to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. Stay 3 steps behind me. Move when I move, freeze when I signal. He ordered, all pretense of the differential janitor utterly stripped away. In its place stood someone Rachel had never met. A natural-born commander, accustomed to high-stakes operations, someone whose innate authority was so deeply ingrained, so utterly fundamental, that he no longer even noticed it himself. During their perilous escape through the labyrinthine maintenance corridors, Rachel watched, horrified and mesmerized, as Logan engaged their pursuers with devastating efficiency, neutralizing trained killers with a precision and brutality that could only be honed by years of elite special forces training. His controlled violence, so shocking and alien, simultaneously terrified and utterly captivated her, as she finally, undeniably recognized that this was his true element, not the quiet, compliant submission he had performed for months. One attacker lunged at Logan with a glinting combat knife. He redirected the man's momentum with a practiced ease, disarmed him in a blur of motion, and incapacitated him with a precisely applied chokehold, all in under 5 seconds. Another fired at them from the far end of a dimly lit corridor. Logan, without a second's hesitation, shoved Rachel to safety, calculated the trajectory of the bullet based on the echoing crack of the gunfire, and returned fire without exposing himself. The tactical thinking, the instantaneous reaction, happened so fast it appeared purely instinctive, the result of countless hours of brutal training. They finally reached a secure location. A Spartan, meticulously pre-prepared safe house Logan had established without her knowledge. As Rachel's mind struggled to process the overwhelming revelation that her simple husband had been quietly preparing for this exact scenario all along, Logan finally shared a version. Not the whole truth, but enough of his past. He admitted to being former military special operations, recruited months ago to investigate Atlas after top-level intelligence suggested highly classified technology was being compromised. What he still carefully omitted, however, was his deeply personal connection to the case, and his growing, unsettling suspicions about her father's direct role in the unfolding events. The safe house, though Spartan in its furnishings, was comprehensively equipped. Secure communications arrays, a discreet cache of weapons, emergency cache, medical supplies, multiple escape routes, every detail spoke of meticulous planning by someone who had done this many times before. Rachel took in the environment, piece by piece, painstakingly connecting these new, jarring revelations to the complex puzzle that was Logan Hayes. Your father contacted someone in my former chain of command weeks before his death, Logan explained, his voice low and steady, as he systematically secured the perimeter. He suspected internal sabotage, but he didn't know who to trust within Atlas itself. I was sent to establish a position within the company to investigate quietly. And marrying me? Rachel asked, her voice laced with anger, a fragile mask for the deeper, more profound hurt of betrayal she felt. Was that part of your mission parameters, Commander Hayes? No, Logan answered with a rare, almost startling emotional honesty. That was unexpected. An opportunity for closer access, yes, but it was not planned. As Rachel grappled with these shocking revelations, trying desperately to reconcile the man before her with the man she thought she knew, Logan received an urgent, encrypted message from a former teammate. The terse warning flashed across his secure comms device. *Sable Phoenix is compromised. Primary targets include Atlas leadership. Rachel didn't understand the cryptic terminology, but Logan's visceral reaction, a momentary, almost imperceptible break in his careful control, a shadow of deep concern flickering across his eyes, told her this was critical, deeply personal information from his haunted past. Before she could demand further explanation, surveillance footage from her penthouse apartment, now live-streamed to their secure monitors, revealed Marcus Blackwood and his private security teams methodically searching their home. More disturbingly, they discovered sophisticated listening devices meticulously hidden among Rachel's personal items, nestled within her wardrobe, embedded in the frame of her bed. Her presence, her very life, had been monitored for months, possibly since even before her father's death. The conspiracy, they both realized with a chilling certainty, was far larger, far more deeply entrenched than either had ever suspected. "They've been watching me all along," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible, the raw violation hitting her with a physical force she hadn't anticipated. The horrifying thought that her most private moments, her raw grief over her father, her deepest vulnerabilities, her fleeting moments of despair, had all been observed, meticulously recorded by enemies masquerading as trusted allies, made her physically ill, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Logan's strong, steady hand found her shoulder, a grounding, comforting weight in the swirling storm of her emotions. "But they didn't see you," he said quietly, his gaze intense, piercing through her fear. "Not the real you. I've watched you too, Rachel, the person I've seen. They have no idea who they're really dealing with." As they processed this chilling information, the undeniable, long-simmering chemistry between them ignited, blazing fiercely in the confined space of the safe house. Anger, adrenaline, and months of rigorously suppressed attraction culminated in an intimate encounter that surprised them both with its profound emotional intensity. Afterward, in a rare, unguarded moment of shared vulnerability, Logan cautiously shared fragments of his past. Not the classified details, those remained locked away, but the devastating emotional cost of his former life, the silent battles he still fought. Rachel, in turn, revealed her own deeply buried grief over her father's loss and the profound, isolating loneliness of her position at the apex of Atlas. "I haven't trusted anyone since my parents died," she admitted, her voice a fragile whisper in the oppressive darkness. "Not fully. Not even my father toward the end." She paused, a new, painful realization dawning. "He was keeping secrets, too." "Trust is a luxury in our worlds," Logan replied, his fingers tracing absent, soothing patterns on her shoulder. "But sometimes," he added, his voice barely audible, "it's also a necessity." This fragile, nascent connection was immediately, brutally tested when Logan's secure communication system blared to life, alerting them to yet another, more aggressive attempt on Atlas's servers. This time, the attack specifically targeted the prototype database, the digital vault where the company's most advanced, cutting-edge weapons research was stored. The following days established a new, complex dynamic between them. By day, Rachel flawlessly maintained her Ice Queen CEO persona, seemingly unaffected by the recent, tumultuous events, while secretly working in clandestine partnership with Logan to identify compromised employees within her vast organization. By night, they returned to the Spartan sanctuary of the safe house, analyzing encrypted data, dissecting intelligence, and, in the process, gradually sharing more of themselves, chipping away at their carefully constructed defenses. Logan began to reveal strategic details of his military background, carefully without compromising classified information. His specialized training in psychological operations, his remarkable facility with multiple languages, his years spent meticulously tracking ruthless arms dealers across global conflict zones. Rachel, in turn, shared the immense weight of inheriting her father's formidable legacy, her arduous struggle to earn respect in the fiercely male-dominated defense industry, and her genuine, deeply held passion for technology that fundamentally protects, rather than simply destroys. "I never wanted to build weapons," she confessed during a rare, quiet moment, her voice tinged with a long-held sorrow. "I wanted to create defense systems, shields, not swords. My father understood that. The contracts that excited him most were always the protective ones." Missile interceptors, secure communications, threat detection systems. That's why they targeted him. Logan suggested, his voice grim. Someone who prioritizes protection over aggression would be the first to notice if offensive capabilities were being deliberately compromised for nefarious purposes. Their professional collaboration swiftly evolved into a genuine, formidable partnership, a seamless fusion of their disparate strengths. Logan profoundly respected Rachel's analytical brilliance, her incisive strategic thinking, and her unwavering ethical compass. Rachel, in turn, came to deeply value his unparalleled field experience and his instinctive, almost primal understanding of human motivation and betrayal. Where she saw complex technological solutions, he anticipated critical human vulnerabilities. Together, they meticulously constructed a more complete, horrifying picture of the conspiracy than either could have possibly pieced together alone. The evidence trail, chilling and undeniable, led to a deeply disturbing conclusion. Atlas technology had been systematically modified to create a pervasive backdoor vulnerability in American defense systems, potentially allowing hostile, remote access to critical national infrastructure. The conspiracy, they realized with growing horror, extended far beyond mere financial profit. It delved deep into the treacherous realm of national security threats, a betrayal on an unimaginable scale. More personally troubling for Rachel was the mounting, irrefutable evidence that her father had discovered this exact, horrifying plot shortly before his untimely death. The timing matches, Logan confirmed, his voice grave, examining the meticulously constructed timeline they had created. Your father began accessing unusual server directories 2 weeks before his death. The very next day, an encrypted call was placed to my former commanding officer. Why wouldn't he go directly to the authorities? Rachel asked, her voice tight with a mixture of confusion and renewed pain. Because he didn't know who to trust? Logan explained, his eyes meeting hers, understanding etched deep in their depths. If the conspiracy reached high enough, official channels could be hopelessly compromised. A black ops team used to operating outside normal parameters was his safest, perhaps his only, option. As they worked tirelessly to document the full scope of the conspiracy without alerting Blackwood, Logan and Rachel simultaneously navigated the increasingly complex terrain of their evolving personal relationship. Having lived behind such carefully constructed facades for so long, she as the untouchable ice queen, he as the invisible janitor, both struggled, often awkwardly, with the profound discomfort of genuine vulnerability. Small, almost imperceptible moments revealed the subtle shifts in their dynamic. Logan instinctively responding to perceived threats with protective positioning that Rachel no longer resisted, almost leaning into his silent shield. Rachel unconsciously reaching for Logan's steadying presence during moments of profound doubt, a silent affirmation of her growing reliance. The definitive turning point came when Rachel discovered her father's hidden personal server, a final, secret repository containing his last, desperate investigation notes. Among them, nestled deep within encrypted files, was surveillance footage of Logan from years earlier, younger, in crisp military uniform, receiving high honors in a classified ceremony. The accompanying file identified him unequivocally as Commander Hayes of the Sable Phoenix Unit, credited with preventing multiple catastrophic terrorist attacks on American soil, a hero of the shadows. The screen showed a different Logan. Younger, yes, but still standing at rigid attention, medals pinned proudly to his chest by a high-ranking military official. His face bore the same controlled, impassive expression, but his eyes, she noted with a pang, held none of the deep, haunting shadows that now perpetually tormented them. More shocking, more profoundly moving, was a personal message from her father, a final, desperate recording made just days before his death. Asterisk, if you're seeing this, my daughter, I failed. I failed to expose the traitors at Atlas. Asterisk, Joseph Donovan's face on the screen was tense with an urgent, almost desperate worry. His normally confident, commanding demeanor utterly replaced by a profound, paternal concern. Asterisk, trust no one from the board. Absolutely no one. I've requested extraction assistance from an old military contact, a man I implicitly trust. If Commander Hayes reaches you, he's the only one you can trust completely. The only one. I believe they've compromised our defense contracts, and they'll stop at nothing to cover their tracks. Rachel. If I'm right, Hayes warned, his voice low and heavy with grim experience. They'll come for you next. He understands what we're dealing with. He's seen these people before, knows the insidious threads they weave. The gravity of his words hung in the air, a chilling premonition that settled deep into Rachel's bones. The threat was not just to Atlas, but to her very existence. Rachel confronted Logan, the urgent need for absolute truth overriding any lingering hesitation. Tell me everything, she demanded, her voice tight with a mixture of fear and betrayal. Everything about your presence in my life, about what you truly are. They stood in the quiet of her temporary safe house, the city lights a blur outside, their shadows long and distorted against the wall. The moment crackled with unspoken tension, Logan's usual stoicism barely containing a hidden torrent of information. Logan finally revealed a truth far more intricate than she could have imagined. Her father, Joseph Donovan, wasn't just vaguely aware of Logan's mission. He had specifically requested Logan by name. Years ago, their paths had crossed during a highly classified interaction, an event that had forged an unspoken bond and a mutual respect, making Donovan trust Logan with his daughter's life. But there was another, deeper layer of motivation Logan had kept hidden, a secret he now wrestled with. It was a faded memory from his youth, one he carried like a sacred wound. As a young soldier, barely out of uniform, ravaged by the invisible scars of a difficult deployment and grappling with the brutal reality of homelessness, he had been starving. Desperate, on the brink of despair, a teenage Rachel, with an unexpected flash of youthful kindness, had once offered him half her sandwich outside her father's towering building. That small, almost insignificant act of generosity had not only staved off his hunger but had, in its quiet way, saved his life, reminding him there was still humanity worth fighting for. That singular moment of connection, a beacon in his darkest hour, had stayed with him through countless harrowing missions, a poignant reminder of the innocent world he was fighting to protect, a world personified by a girl with a generous heart. I was Sable Phoenix, Logan admitted, the words a raw confession ripped from the depths of his guarded past. The name itself seemed to carry the weight of impossible missions and difficult choices. Sable Phoenix, a classified special operations unit, an ethereal entity operating in the shadows, tasked with confronting threats that existed beyond the official scope, challenges that conventional channels couldn't touch. Rachel's gaze widened, her mind racing to connect the dots. Your father worked with us once, indirectly, Logan elaborated, his voice steadier now, as if shedding the secret had lightened his load. He helped us track a highly sensitive piece of technology that had been stolen by a particularly dangerous terrorist group. Rachel absorbed this new revelation, her father's shadow stretching longer than she'd ever known. And he specifically asked for you, she reiterated, still grappling with the full implications. Helm did, Logan confirmed, using her father's old call sign, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. But I would have volunteered anyway. Atlas was already on our watch list. Too many coincidences. Too many security failures that simply shouldn't have happened with your cutting-edge systems. He paused, his eyes narrowing. Blackwood was sloppy or overconfident. As Logan finished his explanation, the digital world intruded with a sharp, insistent ping. An urgent alert flashed across a secured tablet. Blackwood had scheduled an emergency board meeting for the very next day. His agenda was clear. Present fabricated evidence of leadership compromise and force a vote on Rachel's removal as CEO. A cold dread settled over them both. He wasn't just moving. He was accelerating, attempting a brazen power grab before they could expose his sprawling conspiracy. He's accelerating his timeline, Logan observed, his gaze fixed on the meeting notification, his tactical mind already processing. Something spooked him. He probably realized we've been accessing the secure servers, digging into places he thought were impenetrable. What's our play? Rachel asked, her voice snapping with renewed purpose, the strategist in her instantly taking over. The time for passive intelligence gathering was over. With every second ticking away, Rachel made a decision that surprised even Logan. Instead of retreating further into the digital shadows, she proposed they return to Atlas openly, defiantly. She, as the rightful CEO, would fight for her company, while he, finally shedding his disguise, would step fully into his true expertise as her formidable security advisor. "No more hiding," she declared, a fierce glint in her eyes. "We take the fight to them head-on." The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown. That night, as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, the careful, unspoken walls they had built around themselves finally dissolved completely. Their physical closeness, once born of necessity and guarded respect, now carried the undeniable weight of genuine emotional investment. In the quiet darkness, each recognized something essential in the other: a matching resilience, a core of unyielding steel beneath their different exteriors. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Rachel whispered, her fingers tracing the lines of his arm as they lay entwined. "This stopped being just a contract a long, long time ago." Logan's fingers intertwined with hers, his usual reserve giving way to a quiet, profound certainty. "For me," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "It was never just a contract." The Grand Atlas boardroom, usually a bastion of hushed power plays, fell into an abrupt, stunned silence as Rachel entered. At her side, Logan walked not in his humble janitor's uniform, but in an impeccably tailored suit that did nothing to disguise his lean, powerful military bearing, only serving to accentuate it. Blackwood's momentary shock, a flicker of genuine surprise on his usually unreadable face, quickly shifted to a practiced, predatory pleasantness. "Rachel," he purred, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, "we were just discussing some security concerns, and I see you've brought your husband." "My head of personal security," Rachel corrected smoothly, her voice cool and steady, though a subtle fire burned in her eyes. "Given recent events, I trust the board won't object to a little extra protection." A few uneasy murmurs rippled through the room, but no one dared challenge her. The meeting commenced with Blackwood launching his attack, presenting meticulously doctored communications, supposedly proving Rachel had been sharing classified information with outside parties. It was a masterful, cynical frame-up, designed to implicate her in the very crimes he himself had committed. As board members murmured with feigned or genuine concern, Rachel maintained perfect composure, a serene mask concealing her strategic patience. She allowed Blackwood to build his elaborate house of cards, waiting for the opportune moment to dismantle it. The boardroom air grew thick with tension as Blackwood displayed fabricated emails, supposedly showing Rachel offering highly classified Atlas technology to foreign buyers. Several board members exchanged troubled, worried glances, their faces etched with uncertainty, while others, more seasoned and perhaps already privy to Blackwood's true nature, watched with expressions that suggested they already knew what was coming next. "These are serious accusations, Marcus," Rachel stated, her voice unwavering despite the immense stakes. If they were true, her eyes, however, held no fear, only a steely resolve. "Fortunately, we have evidence of a different narrative." She then presented her counter-evidence. Meticulously compiled records of Blackwood's illicit offshore accounts, their balances swelling suspiciously after every critical prototype failure. When Blackwood, his face paling slightly, attempted to dismiss these as mere coincidences, Logan stepped forward. With a quiet, authoritative presence, he displayed intercepted communications, a torrent of encrypted messages between Blackwood and known international arms dealers. The boardroom erupted. Accusations, denials, and gasps of shock reverberated through the now chaotic space. "This is absurd," Blackwood blustered, his confidence visibly shaken, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. "You're trying to deflect from your own treason by accusing me, your father's oldest friend." "My father," Rachel replied with deadly calm, her voice cutting through the din like a surgical blade, "began investigating you weeks before his death. We have his records. All of them." The finality of her words was devastating. In the ensuing chaos, with his betrayal laid bare, Blackwood triggered a building-wide security protocol. Ostensibly, it was for a potential data breach, a desperate attempt to regain control. In reality, it was to lock down the entire Atlas facility, trapping everyone inside with his loyal, heavily armed security team in control. As emergency lights flickered on, casting long, menacing shadows, Logan instantly recognized the chilling tactic. "He's isolating the building," he stated, his voice tight with urgency. "This isn't containment. It's preparation for the elimination of witnesses." Red warning lights began to flash throughout the sprawling Atlas complex, pulsing like a wounded heart, as heavy security doors automatically sealed with a hydraulic hiss, trapping bewildered employees in separate, isolated sections of the building. Over the public address system, Blackwood's amplified voice, now devoid of its previous pleasantness and laced with a cold, ruthless authority, announced a critical security breach requiring immediate lockdown procedures. Simultaneously, security teams loyal to him, identified by subtle markings, moved with chilling efficiency to secure key areas and seize strategic control points. What followed was a carefully orchestrated battle. A deadly dance played out across the vast, futuristic landscape of the Atlas complex. Logan, his military instincts razor-sharp, coordinated with a small, trusted cadre of security personnel he discreetly vetted over weeks, guiding them through the unfolding chaos. Simultaneously, Rachel, abandoning her corporate restraint, used her intimate knowledge of Atlas systems and her hidden override codes to maintain crucial system access, turning Blackwood's own infrastructure against him. Blackwood, now fully revealing the ruthless sociopath beneath his polished, avuncular facade, broadcast incriminating evidence implicating Rachel in her father's death, turning the facility's own screens into propaganda tools, while deploying heavily armed tactical teams with explicit orders. Eliminate both Rachel and Logan. The brutal confrontation forced both protagonists to fully embrace their true selves, shedding any remaining pretense. Rachel, the CEO, abandoned her careful corporate persona, unleashing her brilliant mind and her profound, intimate knowledge of Atlas systems to outmaneuver Blackwood's teams, a digital maestro orchestrating their every move. Logan, the former special ops soldier, fully unleashed his military expertise, a silent, deadly protector, shielding Rachel while systematically neutralizing threats with a chilling precision, using just enough force to incapacitate, never to brutalize. Through labyrinthine maintenance tunnels and secure, desolate corridors, they fought their way, a formidable two-person army, toward the server core, the very heart of Atlas, where the most damning evidence of Blackwood's vast conspiracy was stored. Rachel's unparalleled technical knowledge, an intuitive dance with complex systems, combined with Logan's raw, tactical experience and combat prowess, made them an unstoppable team, anticipating each other's moves with a growing, almost telepathic synchronicity. The climax of their desperate struggle occurred deep within the gleaming Atlas server core. Blackwood, his face a mask of furious determination, was already there, frantically initiating a sequence designed to destroy all incriminating evidence while simultaneously uploading a malicious backdoor program to critical defense clients worldwide. Rachel and Logan arrived just as he activated the catastrophic sequence, leading to a final brutal confrontation where Blackwood, cornered and desperate, revealed the full, horrifying scope of his betrayal, including his direct, cold-blooded role in her father's murder. "I was weak, just like you," Blackwood sneered, his fingers flying across the keyboard, initiating the server purge. His voice dripped with venom, mocking Rachel. Brilliant with technology, perhaps, but utterly naive about power. He actually believed Atlas should prioritize protection over profit. "That's what Atlas was founded for," Rachel countered, her fingers frantically attempting to access the override controls, her voice trembling with rage. "That's what your father believed," Blackwood scoffed, his eyes gleaming with a twisted satisfaction. "But there's far more money in selling to both sides than there is in merely defending one." As he drew a concealed weapon, a glint of steel flashing in the emergency lights, Logan moved with the terrifying speed and honed reflexes of his special forces training, placing himself instinctively between Rachel and the immediate danger. The ensuing brutal struggle left Logan seriously wounded, Blackwood dead, but not before his dying act. He activated the server's irreversible self-destruct sequence, ensuring all evidence of his conspiracy would be incinerated. Blood, a stark, spreading crimson stain, bloomed across Logan's shirt from a gunshot wound to his shoulder. Gritting his teeth against the searing pain, he urged Rachel toward the rapidly sealing exit. "We need to go now. This place is rigged to blow." With the facility evacuating in chaos and critical systems failing one by one, Rachel faced an impossible, heart-wrenching choice. Escape with Logan, getting him the immediate medical attention he so desperately needed, or remain behind to frantically override the destruction sequence, preserving the crucial evidence needed to clear her name and expose the larger, insidious conspiracy. Logan, despite the agonizing pain from his injury, insisted she save the evidence. "Some things are worth the sacrifice," he rasped, his eyes fixed on hers. "So are some people," Rachel countered, her fingers already flying across the nearest terminal, her mind working at a furious pace to halt the deletion process while simultaneously pulling Logan, who swayed weakly, toward the exit. In that moment of profound crisis, Rachel found a third, audacious option. Leveraging her extraordinary technical brilliance, she initiated a rapid, desperate transfer of essential data to secure external servers, a digital ghost escaping the collapsing infrastructure, all while physically helping Logan, his arm draped heavily over her shoulder, escape the rapidly crumbling server facility. The explosion, when it came, tore through much of the physical evidence, but not before Rachel had captured enough crucial data to conclusively expose Blackwood's entire conspiracy. As emergency services swarmed the Atlas campus, Rachel remained unyielding at Logan's side through his harrowing emergency surgery. In those long, agonizing hours, the carefully constructed walls around her heart, fortifications built over a lifetime of guarded independence, finally and completely dismantled, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and profoundly connected. When Logan finally regained consciousness, his eyes fluttering open to meet hers, their shared glance communicated a truth neither was yet ready to voice aloud. Their pragmatic arrangement had evolved into something neither had ever expected to find, something infinitely more profound and enduring. 6 months later, Atlas Defense Technologies had undergone a radical, transformative metamorphosis. With Blackwood's sprawling conspiracy meticulously exposed and dismantled, Rachel, now a visionary leader forged in the crucible of fire, had completely restructured the company, embedding transparency as its unshakable core value. Military contracts continued, but now with rigorously enhanced oversight and ethical guidelines that her father, Joseph Donovan, would have wholeheartedly approved. The Atlas headquarters had been meticulously rebuilt, rising stronger from the ashes, its security protocols completely overhauled and modernized under a new, vigilant leadership. Where once secrecy had been paramount, now uncompromising accountability took precedence, enforced by multiple layers of oversight, ensuring no single individual could ever again compromise critical systems. Logan, his true background now a matter of classified record with the Defense Department, had assumed a legitimate, respected role as Atlas's Director of Security. His formidable expertise, once hidden beneath a janitor's uniform, was now openly acknowledged and deeply valued. Their marriage, once a strategic business arrangement, had blossomed into a genuine, passionate partnership, celebrated not in a courthouse, but with a small, private ceremony, a heartfelt declaration that officially replaced their initial, transactional vows. At the emotional dedication of the new Joseph Donovan Memorial Research Wing, Rachel delivered a moving speech, honoring her father's enduring legacy of innovation, integrity, and unwavering ethical commitment. From the audience, Logan watched with a quiet, profound pride as she announced the Sable Phoenix Initiative, a groundbreaking security protocol designed to ensure no weapon system could ever be deployed without multi-level, biometric authentication, specifically preventing the insidious kind of backdoor exploitation Blackwood had attempted. "My father believed in building shields, not swords," Rachel told the assembled dignitaries and employees, her voice resonant with conviction. "The Sable Phoenix Initiative ensures that Atlas technology will always protect those it's meant to serve, never compromised, never turned against the innocent." The name held a special, deeply personal significance for them both, honoring Logan's former, shadowy unit while transforming its legacy from one of secrecy to one of vigilant protection. When a reporter, intrigued, Asked about the unusual name, Rachel simply smiled. It represents rising from ashes stronger than before, she stated, her gaze briefly meeting Logan's. Something both Atlas and I have personal experience with. In their private life, away from the public eye, both continued the quiet, arduous work of healing from past wounds. Logan, gradually, gently, shared the once classified details of his former missions, weaving a tapestry of shadows and sacrifices, including the full, poignant truth about his first, desperate encounter with Rachel years earlier. He recounted how, as a young, broken soldier battling debilitating PTSD and the crushing weight of homelessness, a teenage Rachel, radiating an unexpected warmth, had given him bread outside her father's imposing building, an act of simple kindness that had quite literally saved his life in his darkest moment, pulling him back from the brink of despair. What she remembered as a fleeting, forgettable interaction had been nothing short of transformative for him, imbuing him with a purpose when he had none. "I don't even remember it," Rachel admitted, her voice thick with emotion when Logan finally shared this intimate, painful story. "There was a man outside Dad's building. I gave him half my lunch. You said everyone deserves to eat." Logan recalled with perfect, aching clarity, his gaze distant, lost in the past. "I hadn't eaten in 3 days, was considering ending it all that night. That small moment of humanity, Rachel, it mattered more than you could ever know." Their relationship evolved into a beautiful, seamless balance of strengths. Her strategic brilliance complementing his tactical expertise, her intense, focused drive grounded by his steady, unwavering presence. Neither attempted to change the other's essential nature. Instead, they created a sacred space where both could be fully themselves, without pretense or reservation. A true partnership of equals. The final scene found them in their new home, a haven nestled amongst the rolling hills outside Austin, Texas, reviewing security protocols for an upcoming high-level government visit to Atlas. Work naturally transitioned to personal connection, the lines between professional partners and intimate ones finally, completely dissolving. When Logan confessed, his voice tinged with a rare vulnerability, that his initial mission parameters had certainly never included falling in love with his target. Rachel smiled with a warmth few had ever seen. "The best operations always involve unexpected variables," she told him, echoing his own words from their early training sessions. "That's why we plan for everything and adapt to reality." As they stood together, overlooking the vast, serene Texas landscape, Logan's security alerts pinged softly, signaling a potential new threat to Atlas technology. It was a familiar pattern, suggesting that Blackwood's international partners had not abandoned their objectives. They were merely regrouping. Rather than concern, both responded with the focused, unified readiness of people who had found their perfect counterparts, their absolute equals in both peace and battle. "Ready for another mission, Commander?" Rachel asked, already moving toward her secure laptop, a glint of steel and anticipation in her eyes. Logan's smile held all the certainty his former life had lacked, a quiet, profound declaration. "With you?" he replied, his gaze locked on hers, the unspoken promise of their future hanging, radiant, in the air.